Hello, hockey humans of the world. Welcome to Tough Call Podcast. The preseason doesn't officially start until September 20th, but I did cover my first on ice incident of the season from the rookie showcase game between Montreal and Winnipeg. And of course, we also had our first couple of big clean checks as well. So, tiny bit of on ice content for you this week. Now, we also need to talk about some more off ice topics, including the McDavid contract saga and the effects of his comments during a recent interview with Elliot Friedman and Kyle Bukauskas. Also, fighting. Does it have a place in today's game? And my answer will probably surprise you based on what I do. So stick around for that. And speaking of fighting, has the Q fighting ban really caused any problems with the game? What even is the Q fighting ban anyway, really? And is hockey really so soft today? I guess that all depends on your definition of soft, and my definition of what is soft and what isn't often isn't popular, shall we say. More on that in about 10 minutes. And we can't talk about soft hockey without talking about whether neck guards or face masks should be mandatory at the pro level. I was going to talk about that this week anyway, but I just heard yesterday morning that as per at Inside AHL Hockey on Twitter, Matt Petgrave may be returning to hockey in the ECHL this season. As you may remember, he was the player involved in the 2023 death of Adam Johnson. So that's sure to fire up this neck guard debate once again. And I'll give you my 2 cents on that matter to probably end the show. So, the beauty of all of these topics is that they are entirely related to each other. So, in about 30 minutes or so, I'll have all this wrapped up with a nice little bow. Whether you're driving right now, out for a run, doing the dishes, or just sitting around a speaker on the deck like the good old days, I'm happy to be part of it. Thanks for allowing me to be part of your life and stick around for Tough Call Podcast. As always, if you want a more in depth breakdown of any of the incidents I talk about here, or for even more hits, more questionable calls, what have you, check out the Tough Call YouTube channel and subscribe right now. You can follow me on most social media platforms, including at Tough Call Pod on X and Blue Sky, the Tough Call page on Facebook, at Tough Call Podcast on Instagram, and at Tough_Call on TikTok. My theme song is written by Everett Bolton. And now let's get into the incident of the week. This episode's incident of the week is the Owen Protz hit on Kieran Walton. It's one of the only ones I've covered so far on my YouTube channel. You can get my in-depth breakdown there, as I said. But we're going to take a look at the clip here now for those of you watching the video portion. And if not, you can check it out on the YouTube channel anytime you want. But just watching this hit, I don't see anything overly wrong with it. It wants to be a good check. I don't think there's anything malicious about it. He doesn't ride upward enough to get the head, but there is too much outward explosion for me to be completely happy with it. And it comes down to what I talked about last week on the podcast, the USA hockey rules about lifting your stick up. Lifting your stick up on approach to contact instead of keeping it on the ice naturally brings your body upward, and it elevates your shoulders, it elevates your arms. Instead of staying low with the stick on the ice and using mostly hip to hip contact here, he raises up with his upper body. Even though he's only bringing his arms up to his chest to kind of protect himself, shall we say, he's not really using it in any way to be malicious. It does That rising up does add an element of force to this check that doesn't need to be there. There's unnecessary outward explosion, is how we would describe it, how the rule book describes it. So I wouldn't do anything like a suspension here. That'd be crazy for this hit, I think. But I wouldn't mind seeing maybe a 2 minute minor for roughing, a 2 minute minor for charging, something to indicate that there is excessive force or something needless about the check that was done. For me, he could have stayed lower. He could have done everything just a little bit better, but it wasn't the worst hit in the world. So, minor penalty at best, if that, really. Um, Also, moving into a clean check, a definitely clean check, Elias Pettersson on Avon in one of the rookie games. And this was just beautiful, just completely timed it perfectly. There's no explosion whatsoever. And this is kind of what I'm talking about. This is, for those of you watching the video again, this is a prime example of how not to explode. Pedersen does here is put himself into the lane and make that player skate into him. He doesn't do anything to increase the force or add to the force. The force of this check is just naturally, organically created by the speed of the game of hockey itself. and Patterson just puts himself great positionally, and the player just runs right into him. And because he angles so well and times it so well, he doesn't need to outreach with his arms or extend an elbow out or stick his leg out or anything because he's not going to miss. He's angled it perfectly. This is a perfect, clean check. It's a great way to start the year off. I'd love to see a lot more of these. And now let's move on to the McDavid contract talks. In a recent interview with Elliot Friedman, McDavid said the usual things. He loves Edmonton. His wife loves Edmonton. He wants to win at Edmonton, but he hasn't been shy in saying that all options are on the table, including 8-year term, 1-year term, 0-year term, for that matter. As in, we're done here. And the specific sentence I'm going to talk about, it's highlighted up top in the video there for those of you watching. I have all the faith in the world in this 2025-26 season. Beyond that remains to be seen. So, look, the guy's in the middle of a contract negotiation. The Oilers have an opportunity to be creative with the options. They've been to the final twice already. The winning window is still wide open in Edmonton. There's no need to make knee jerk reactions, sign anybody just for the sake of signing them. You want to make sure this is the right deal for everyone involved. There's no reason for McDavid to rush into anything either from his side of things. People will say it will be a distraction to the team. Well, it'll only be a distraction if we make it one. If people continue to create it as a distraction, just cool your jets, people. Connor McDavid, he said it best. People think they know when they don't know. And what's worse for me is people who have no clue what they're talking about talk as if they do know. That's what drives me crazy. I'm not going to single anyone out because there's just a few of them right now. But if you fit that shoe, you are the biggest part of the problem right now. Stop saying you know things when you don't. Fans can have opinions, sure. We can talk about it, but when we do, we need to be clear that it's speculation, that it's opinion, that we have no more real reason to believe he's signing or not staying in Edmonton than we have to believe he's going to sign in Toronto or something. Like, we have to stop speculating. We have to stop feeding this sort of rumor mill and just let it play out. Just cool your jets, people. Now, Q fighting ban. What even is it really? Starting with the 2023-24 season, the QMJHL banned fighting. And I put ban in quotation marks because I say it like it's in quotes because I know it's a crackdown. It's not a ban, it's just a crackdown on fighting. But there's really no such thing as a ban on anything in sports. Fighting was already banned, really. I mean, it's always been a major penalty. What they did was just increase the punishment. It's already been a penalty. It's already something that shouldn't happen in the game. It's one of the most severe penalties there is, 5-minute major. But now they're just making it more of a severe punishment. And we'll get into that. Like, oh boy, will we get into that. But first, let's give a quick rundown on things for those who may not know the structure of the CHL and that sort of thing. If you don't know, the CHL is made up of the three major junior hockey leagues in Canada. So the Canadian Hockey League is made up of the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, the Ontario Hockey League, and the Western Hockey League. And they just be short, everyone just calls them by their first names: the W, the O, and the Q. And the information I'm about to read off is taken from a September 19th, 2023 article by Mark Lazarus of The Athletic. In 2012, the OHL brought in a 2-game suspension for any player who accumulated 10 fights in a season. Your 10th fight, you get a 2-game suspension. In 2016, they reduced that number to 3 games. So if you fight 3 times in the season in the OHL, you get 2 games. They also, in 2016, introduced an aggressor penalty. And it's important for me to differentiate between the instigator and the aggressor. For simplified terms, an instigator is someone who makes sure that a fight happens, makes someone fight when they don't want to. The aggressor is someone who can't let go of the fact that the fight's over. It's someone who continues to inflict punishment on a player after they're no longer able to defend themselves. So that's the difference between an instigator and an aggressor. So the OHL made a game misconduct for anyone who fought twice in the same game. According to this article, that cut the OHL fighting roughly in half. And I believe it because the same thing has happened in other leagues where they've increased the punishment for fighting. But this was back in 2016, mind you. And I want you to log that year in your mind because when you think about what the Q has done and when they've done it kind of comes into play here. So, what has the Q done? Under the new rules in 2023-24, players who engage in a fight will be automatically ejected from the game. So one fight, you're done, not two. Any player deemed the instigator will be given an automatic 1 game suspension. And if you're declared the aggressor, it's 2 games. You get a 1 game suspension if you fight twice in the same season. So they call that a fighting ban? Like, I mean, first of all, I just told you that in 2016, the OHL decided to issue a 2 game suspension for any player who fights 3 times in the same season. Essentially, if I'm reading it right, this Q fighting ban ends up being exactly the same because if you fight twice in the Q in one season, you get a 1 game suspension. And on your third fight, you get another 1 game suspension. So it's basically a 2 game suspension per 3 fights, same as the OHL. The OHL ejects you from the game after 2 fights in the same game, the Q after one. So again, it's not much different. And did the OHL turn into a disaster in 2016 and ever since? Quite on the contrary, actually. Up to 2015, the OHL won 9 Memorial Cups. The tournament started back in 1983. So the OHL won 9 Memorial Cups. The W won 16 of those, and the Q only won 7. So the W completely dominant from 83 to 2015 in Memorial Cups, but the O was pretty up there. From 2005 to 2015, that 10-year window, just to give it a little more of a close history, it was OHL 4, WHL 3, Q4. But here's the important part. Since the OHL reduced fighting in 2016, it's won 4 of the 8 Memorial Cups played since. There were a couple missed due to COVID. And this includes 2016 and 17, the year they instituted their fighting rules that cut fighting in half, and the subsequent year after. They won back to back Memorial Cups. So I don't think it made them struggle or hurt their development. Um, the other 4 belong to the Q, who won the 4 in a row that were sandwiched between the O victories because the OHL also won back to back in the most recent ones. The last 2 ones that were played, the OHL won those. Remember the only league that hasn't done anything about fighting? The WHL? They've left it the same. They haven't won a Memorial Cup since 2014. And before that, they didn't win till 2008. Now, I understand when you want to look at it the other way, you could argue Q won 4 straight Memorial Cups up to 2023, then implemented their fighting ban, and in 2023-24, they haven't won since. So you could sit there and do the opposite of what I do. Go bam, fighting wins. But first off, you'd have to explain why it was the OHL that won when the Q didn't, not the WHL, because they're the ones that have the most fighting. And second, you'd have to assume that my point is that fighting loses and not fighting wins. You'd have to think that that was my point about fighting. But my point is to say the fighting ban really has done absolutely nothing. It hasn't affected the game one iota other than to serve the purpose it's intended to do, which is reduce fighting. That's all it's done. It hasn't changed anything about the way the leagues are functioning. There's been no unintended consequence of players taking liberties, no uptick in dirty play, injuries, other types of violence. Now, to be fair, I don't have a ton of stats to back that up, but to be honest, as hard as I've looked, it seems that the Q League suspensions and fines information prior to 2023-24 is hard to come by. It's not only up to me though to back that up. My best evidence that the fighting ban hasn't affected anything so far is the silence from the other side. The NCAA has no fighting. It's a fine league. There's a good representation of NCAA players making an impact in the NHL. The OHL has significantly reduced fighting, and it seems to be going okay. There's 10 years worth of data there that someone could have used to prove their case that it's, all gone to hell in a handbasket, but they haven't yet. And I'm going to just assume it's because that data doesn't exist. And as for the Q ban itself, during the Q preseason of 2023-24, I remember there was a questionable hit where a player had a knee injury, and the headlines were Q ban already having negative effect, and Q League ban endangers players, and this and that. But people couldn't wait for someone to get injured so they could put that article. They could run to print with it. It's like they already had it written and they just were waiting to plug in the team names and player names involved. It was almost as if they paid the player to cause the injuries and do a dirty hit so that they'd have something to write about and say, "See, you told you so." But honestly, how many articles have followed since that? How many serious incidents have there really been in either the OHL or the Quebec League to suggest that the game has gone out of control safety wise since fighting has been reduced in either of those leagues? If there'd been enough to matter, someone would have said something by now. Don't you think? I think they would have. So this leads to the overall question of, does fighting have a place in hockey anymore? And believe it or not, my answer is and always has been yes. sometimes fighting is worth it. I love these penalties on fighting. I love the instigator penalty. I love everything about what's been done so far as trying to reduce fighting, but not because I want fighting gone completely. It's completely the opposite. I just want fighting to serve its intended purpose, actually policing and protecting players. And all these rules do right now, the new ones that come in and reduce fighting, is protect players from players who want to abuse the fighting rules as they were. They abuse that rule like any other. These rules don't stop fighting. The bans, they're not stopping fighting. They just force players to pick their moments better. That's all. If something is truly worth fighting over, a 1 or 2 game suspension isn't going to stop anybody. It never has. It never will. All it does is protect good teams from the babies who jump people just because they're down by 2 or 3 goals with 5 minutes left and need a reason to feel better about themselves. All it does is help get rid of players who leave the bench to make an unfair numerical advantage in an altercation. It punishes players who take advantage of willing combatants who can no longer defend themselves by continuing to beat on them anyway, even after the fight's already over. None of those rules that stop that will ever stop a player from defending a teammate from a dangerous play. Never. That will always have a place in the game at any level. It always has and it always will. Uh, so I mentioned at the start of the show that Matt Pitgrave would try and make a return to professional hockey, and that looks like it is a go. It looks like he is going to play in the ECHL. And for me, all I'm going to say on his particular matter is it was an accident. It shouldn't have been criminally charged, and he wasn't. And I'm glad he feels comfortable enough to continue playing something that he loves, that he feels comfortable enough in the situation and the reaction of people that he's willing to put himself back out there and play the game that he loves. And that's all I'm going to say on that. But should neck guards and full face shields be mandatory at the pro level? And I'll tell you this, you know what? I don't know if they should be, but I absolutely don't think it would hurt anything. Yeah, they're uncomfortable, but players were used to wearing them all along. It's not like you're adding stuff. Look at it the other way. They wear all this stuff for most of their playing career, and then just when the game gets the fastest and most dangerous, we take as much protection off as reasonably can. You know, why would we do that? They're adults. They should. It's their choice. They know what they're doing, right? But if you ask the general adult public about any safety changes, see what happens. Did goaltenders wearing masks ruin the game? Did it really ruin the game? Have helmets in general ruined the game? No, but players were totally against it. Have visors ruined the game? No. Let's be reasonable here. Look at man games lost to pucks and sticks to the face, faces smeared on the glass or the dasher. Think of how many close calls people have been noting since this Petgrave incident and Adam Johnson's death. How many close calls have there been with skates to necks, skates across wrists? We had Evander Kane miss a lot of time. We've had a couple of players. I know it's rare, but for what wearing a neck guard takes away from the game, it's it's just not unreasonable to say they should wear it all the time to stop those 1 or 2 things when it's so simple to stop, right? Like when you look at players, players will always be players. Broken jaw, whatever, no problem. I'll just slam a full cage on and send me back out there. But for me, why bother with the cage? Why would you put the cage on and go, oh, yeah, it does protect me. That's interesting. Now I can play with a broken jaw. It protects me so much. And then as soon as my jaw's healed, let's take it off. Let's put the wrist back in. I mean, like, it people say it hinders their game, right? Nah, I can't see well enough. I can't play the game the way I can, right? Well, you made it to the NHL, didn't you? You've been wearing that mask forever. You made it to the NHL. It couldn't have been that bad. Again, I'll turn to the NCAA here where they have to wear masks. No NHL scout sits at the draft table and says, boy, that NCAA kid is really good now. So imagine what it'll be like when he doesn't have to wear face protection. Imagine what he'll be able to do. No one says that. I mean, I get, I get that people prefer it, but more and more junior leagues are grandfathering masks in, neck guards in. It's coming, and there's really no good argument against it. Tradition is an argument, but it's not a good enough argument to stop it, in my opinion. Um, so that's the show for today. My theme song is written by Everett Bolton. Remember to find me on social media at Tough Call Pod on X and Blue Sky, the Tough Call page on Facebook, at Tough Call Podcast on Instagram, and at Tough_Call on TikTok. Subscribe to Tough Call on YouTube and follow and rate my podcast on whatever platform it was that you listened to me on. And we'll see you next week.